You're watching the Luca Rosano Show. Here's your host, Luca Rosano.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Luca Rosano Show, and I got a special guest with me. You already know who he is, TV analyst for TSN and the Toronto Raptors. Hello, it's Jack Armstrong. I'm sorry if the impersonation's not up to your standards. How you doing, man? Thanks so much for joining the show.
Luca, it's my pleasure to be on, and no, your imitation's pretty good, actually, and I love the set there. The only thing I have a problem with, I happen to see a Miami Dolphins shirt up there. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, so I do have a problem with that. As long as you don't have a Boston Red Sox hat up there, I'm okay.
No Red Sox hat, none whatsoever, and hopefully your Bills do a lot better this season. We'll see how that goes. But Jack, I want to pick it up here and talk about pretty much this quarantine life. I mean, how you been doing? Are you safe? Your family safe? How you guys been holding up during this difficult time?
Doing fine. Obviously, for me and my family, doing well, thank God. And it's not easy on anybody. But you know, I get up every morning. I get a nice long run in. I'm a big runner, so I run every day and been doing a lot of reading. I enjoy kind of tuning out and turning all the electronics off, and just I love to read in peace and quiet. And my wife and my youngest son's home from college taking classes online, and my older two boys are out on the West Coast doing fine. And you know, for me, the toughest part is being a native New Yorker. I grew up in Brooklyn, and my mom's 93 and she lives in New York by herself, and she's doing great. And my oldest brother lives nearby there. And so we have a lot of family and friends in New York City. And obviously, New York's been just crushed. You know, you think about 9/11, you think about Hurricane Sandy back in 2016. And now you look at this, it's just one thing after another. So I really feel for those folks. And I feel for folks all over the world. I mean, it's just been one of those really tragic, such sad thing. And so we, you know, a lot of prayers for people. And at the same time, it's also given us an opportunity where kind of life slows down. It's a little more simple. And I think we have an opportunity to really enjoy our relationships with people and reflect on all the gifts and all the benefits that we have in our life. And I think when we come out of this, I think people are going to be a little bit more appreciative of what they have and a little bit more, I guess, celebratory about the little things in life. And, you know, when you have an opportunity to do certain things, I think you're going to live life to the fullest, even that much more now coming back out of this.
Yeah, well said. I think we took life for granted before all this, and we'll definitely have a different perspective once this is all over. Speaking of which, let's talk about once this is all over and as it pertains to the NBA season. Jack, in your opinion, do you think we're going to get the continuation of this NBA season this summer? There's been reports now that practice facilities will start opening up. I saw today that Disney World now can be the venue used for some of these games. In your opinion, where do you see this going?
Well, I wish I had the answer. I think your guess is as good as mine. I hope that we have NBA basketball. I hope we have NHL hockey. I hope we have Major League Baseball. I'm a sports fan, and obviously basketball is my life and what I do. So I surely hope we do. We'll be with fans, obviously not to finish this particular season. Are we going to have regular season games? I don't know. Are we going right into the playoffs? I don't know. I just know that it would be really cool, I think, for everybody if we could have some degree of sport, not only our sport, but the ones I mentioned and many others. I think it's something for people that it's a distraction and it's a joy. And I hope that in some way, shape, or form, whatever format they decide to do, that we are able to have sport. But the most important thing is going to be the safety of everyone involved. You know, and to me, that's paramount. Making sure that we ease our way back into this and we do it in a thorough, common sense way that puts people in with their best foot forward and nobody in jeopardy.
Yeah, no, that's the most important part through all of this. Jack, let's talk about the Toronto Raptors for a moment here. I mean, what they've been able to do this season has been nothing short of spectacular. I mean, losing obviously Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, all the injuries they had during the course of the season, still managing to be second in the East and really a viable contender in an Eastern Conference that was shaping up to be a pretty good race. What impressed you the most about this Raptors team before we got into the NBA suspension?
Yeah, no, Luca, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, they have the third best record overall in the NBA. You look at with Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard, what their record was a year ago and where they are now. It's just, and the injuries you mentioned, it's just remarkable. They are a title contender. And honestly, I've had more fun this year than I did last year. And I don't know what's going to happen, but like the last game they played in Salt Lake City before everything got shut down was one of the most fun games of the year. I mean, it was an incredible win. They had a hard-fought game the day before in Sacramento. You win, and now you got to go to Salt Lake City. They're sitting there waiting for you. You're playing a back-to-back. You're playing at altitude, okay? And to me, what they did that night was just nothing short of remarkable. But I think that game defined what this group is all about. Resilient, together. They find solutions to problems. Nick Nurse is an incredible coach. They have great spirit and camaraderie and togetherness. And Kyle Lowry's like a fine wine. He gets better with age.
As a former coach, Jack, talk to me more about the job Nick Nurse did. I mean, juggling different lineups, obviously having guys miss a ton of time, the likes of Kyle Lowry, Serge Ibaka, Fred, Norm, Gasol, the list goes on and on. Was he on par to being the coach of the year, in your opinion, just based on what he was able to do? And I mean, you look at a team like the Warriors, they faced all their injuries and their season fell apart, but the Raptors and Nick Nurse, he was still able to keep everybody together and they were still able to win games, albeit all those injuries.
Well, Luca, two things. Number one, Nick Nurse doesn't focus on things he doesn't have. He only focuses on what he does have. And I think when you look at his true gift as a coach, I think that's one of his main gifts that I really like. He doesn't cry over spilt milk. Hey, this is what I got. I'm rolling with it. And I think secondly, a lot of that comes from his experience coaching over in England and coaching in the G League, D League, that, you don't get a lot of times the best deck of cards. You kind of just roll with it and you learn how to adapt and adjust and kind of wing it. And I think he kind of likes that. I think there's an element of creativity to him, and we know about his musical ability. But I really like that about him, that there's kind of a savant there to him. He comes in and enjoys the blank canvas, and let's try to create something. It doesn't need every I dotted, doesn't need every T crossed. That's always nice, but how often in life does that really happen? Usually you're dealing with issues. I heard a quote one time when I was a young coach, and because you're always dealing with some degree of crisis, and it's a great line. Life is a series of problems. You're either in the middle of one, you just came out of one, or you're about to head into one. And I think that's coaching. That's life on red alert. You're always in crisis management. And I think the best crisis managers a lot of times end up being the best coaches.
Now, it did help a lot that the Raptors developed a next man up mentality and other key guys were able to step up with the injuries that happened, particularly guys like Boucher showing signs of brilliance. We saw a guy like Terrence Davis tear it up from off the bench. He had a string of remarkable games. And then even a guy like Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, Jack, showing his grittiness, his toughness. Out of all of the, I'll call them unsung heroes on this team that had to step up, which one of these guys stood out to you the most?
Well, the Terrence Davis story is really cool. I love him. He's got a can-do spirit. And, he's had some rough times this year, too, as the other two have. But there's that can-do spirit about him, that, undrafted. And, I think it's the old line, environment affects. I say it all the time. There's a residue of winning. I hate the word because it's overused, the word culture, but it actually exists in the area of the Toronto Raptors. There's just a way of doing things. The great Bill Walsh, the Hall of Fame NFL coach, used to talk about standard of performance. I think the Raptors have high standards. And when you get a Hollis Jefferson who came from the Nets, and Chris Boucher and his second NBA team, and Terrence Davis coming undrafted, they come in. This is the Raptor way of doing it. You know, this is how we do it. And you look at the best franchises, you know, you look at the Spurs for so many years in the NBA, or you look at the Patriots. I hate saying it as a Buffalo Bills fan, but you look at the Patriots in the NFL. You know, you look at a Manchester United or the Yankees or the Dodgers in their prime years. There's just a certain way that the Montreal Canadiens in their prime, you know, there are just certain organizations that players come in and you go, you know, when they were at team X, Y, and Z, they didn't do that. And yet they show up to that place. And why did that happen? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with ownership, management, coaching, the standards that are in place, the character of people that are there, and the expectation. And to sit and be part of this for 22 years with the Raptors and to watch the topsy-turvy, up and down roller coaster ride with a lot of twists and turns, and to see how this whole thing has come together, so much of it comes from the people at the top, the commitment of ownership, the vision, the leadership of Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, and their staff, and the great coaching of Dwayne Casey and his staff, and Nick Nurse and his staff.
Jack, next I want to ask you about Norman Powell. When healthy this season, he was playing some of the best basketball of his career. He really carried the load offensively in a lot of these games. How do you think he fits into the Raptors' future, and could he become an everyday starter for this team?
Well, Luca, Norm Powell has made a significant jump this year. Kind of like has figured things out finally, and you watch him. There's like an element of polish to his game now. You know, there were always some rough spots. There was inconsistency. And I'm seeing a guy that he's finally figuring it all out. The game's slowing down for him. He knows what works. He knows what doesn't. He's been really well coached and developed in Toronto. He knows he's going to play. He knows and accepts his role. And he looks like a guy that's just calmed down and has like an element of inner tranquility about how he plays now, and a confidence that he's not frantic anymore. There were times I think he was, you know, and you're too young to know this, but if you like vinyl at all and you like records, you know, records play at a different speed. Some play at 33, some play at 45, some play at 78. I'm showing my age here, Luca, but
I remember those. Don't worry.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing, and I use the term controlled speed. Really good players play at a controlled speed, and I've always felt like Norm Powell, instead of playing at 45, was playing at 78. And when you finally get yourself in a speed that matches your skill, that matches your vision and your basketball feel and IQ, it all comes together. The pieces of the puzzle finally fit. And I'm seeing that right now with Norm Powell.
And that's the beautiful thing about this Raptors team that we saw. I mean, it wasn't just one guy on every given night. I mean, it was a different guy, whether it was Kyle Lowry stepping up, a Norman Powell, a Pascal Siakam, you know, a Fred VanVleet, a Serge Ibaka, who has shown that he's playing some of the best basketball of his career. Jack, overall, who would you say is the Raptors MVP of this season?
Wow. MVP, I'd have to say Kyle Lowry. I mean, the guy has just been an absolute bulldog. I mean, the guy, you know, it's interesting. We're watching the Last Dance, the documentary on the Chicago Bulls, and my appreciation and respect for Scottie Pippen grew even further when Jordan retired after '93, and there was that little gap there, that 2-year gap, where Pippen and the Bulls were still very, very good. They weren't maybe championship, but they were very, very good. My appreciation for how great Scottie Pippen was grew those 2 years. I look at without DeMar DeRozan and without Kawhi Leonard, and now you look at Kyle Lowry, kind of on his own, not necessarily, Siakam's grown. There's so many other pieces of the element that have come into play. I think you see more and more with the spotlight even more on Lowry, his true greatness. And then I would say, in terms of a guy that, and obviously Siakam would be that second guy. Van Vliet's been great. But I tell you what, a guy that has been awesome this year has been Serge Ibaka. By far, when I look at him, this is his best year as a professional player. Now, I don't have the statistics in front of me I don't know whether statistically it's his best year or not. I just know with my eyes and with my heart and with my gut and what I see of a guy and what I've seen of him from the time he started in Oklahoma City to then to the short stint in Orlando and now in Toronto. When I look at Serge Ibaka as a professional athlete, there is no doubt in my mind when I look at him right now, he is in the best space as a player I've ever seen.
So, Jack, obviously the Raptors have a lot of different, good pieces on this team. Let's say the season does come back, we jump into the playoffs. Where would you rank this team amongst the other Eastern Conference powerhouses, against a team like Milwaukee, a team like the Heat, a team like the 76ers, the Celtics? Where do you view this Raptors team? Do you think they're missing something, or do you think this current compilation of players would be enough to potentially get back to an NBA Finals?
Luca, there are so many inexact things going on right now that none of us really know. Going into it, I would say the Raptors are a contender. Coming out of it, I think so much is going to come down to which teams did the best job during this stretch of staying in shape. Which teams handled the short ramp up and then back into play again. And Luca, I don't know whether they're going to be playing regular season games again or they're going to be exhibition games for the 16 teams that are in the playoffs and then right into the playoffs. I have no idea. But so much of it is going to come down to those dynamics. If the Raptors hold firm based upon what we saw prior, and I look at the landscape around, it'll be nice to have a healthy Marc Gasol. It'll be nice to have a healthier group. Now, other teams are going to get healthy too. Particularly a team that probably jumps off the page more than anybody else in Philadelphia in the East, where they were really banged up going into this. So a lot's going to come down to that. But to me, I think the Raptors have every right to feel like they could go nose to nose, toe to toe with Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Miami, Boston, Indiana, and say, bring it on. In defense of those other teams, I think they have the right to feel that way as well. So I think it's going to be fascinating and fabulous. And here's the other thing. Who knows? Does this thing favor, Luca, the younger team with fresher legs? Does it favor the older teams with guys that are self-starters, that are true pros? Do we play 7-game series? Or is it best 2 out of 3? Is it best 3 out of 5? Is it best 4 out of 7? Where do you play them? What are the dynamics? How many days off in between games? There's so many things in play that I don't have the answer to. But I do know that if the Raptors are healthy, they are right in the mix.
A lot of people looked at this Raptors team and, they're obviously super talented. They've been able to do a lot of great things, but many skeptics would, point out the fact that the Raptors don't have that prototypical superstar go-to guy that typically championship teams need. The Raptors had one in Kawhi Leonard last year. Do you view that as a problem going down the stretch, or do you think the Raptors' versatility and depth would make up for that?
Well, I think if you ask the people in Detroit, when they had Rip Hamilton and Chauncey Billups and Tayshaun Prince and Rasheed Wallace and Ben, to me, that team won without a superstar. and they beat the Lakers in 5, if I'm not mistaken, in the NBA Finals. And theoretically, if the refs, I thought they beat them in all 5 games, quite frankly. So to me, I think we get a little too caught up in the lazy narrative of, well, you got to have a superstar. I get that. I mean, star players make a difference. There's no question about it. But it's still a team sport. And this isn't golf. This isn't tennis. Now, I'm gonna, if I have Federer and Nadal or Djokovic, all right, I'm feeling pretty good. Or Serena, okay, I get it. Or a Tiger in his prime or Phil in his prime. I get all that. But it ain't those sports. It still comes down to the beauty of the 5-man game and which team functions per possession at a higher level. And that not only gets positive plays per trip, but doesn't shoot themselves in the foot. And that's my point of coming back. There is such a thing as chemistry. There is such a thing as role definition. And there is such a thing as not beating yourself. And particularly when you get into maybe I don't know, again, are we going to have 5-game series, 7-game series, 3-game series? I don't know. Victory favors the team making the least mistakes. And I'll bet on teams rather than players.
Yeah, that's really well said. Lastly, Jack, I know we're running out of time, but I do want to get your quick thoughts on this. I did a video on this subject recently, and it's the offseason. We don't know when it's going to be, but the offseason to come for this Raptors team. A couple of big name free agents going to be on the market. Fred VanVleet being the biggest, followed by Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. What do you think is going to happen there?
Luca, so much is going to come down to what the cap looks like. I think that's the dynamic. That's the elephant in the room that we really don't know. In a perfect world, I would love to see all 3 of those guys back. They've all been significant contributors to the Toronto Raptors' success. It's unfortunate that Marc Gasol's had a few stints where he's been hurt. But to me, I think a lot comes down to the environment economically in the NBA. What is the cap going to look like? We already took a hit early in the season with the whole thing with Daryl Morey and his statements and the reaction of the Chinese government. I don't mean to be political here. It's just the reality of there's going to be a loss of revenue on that revenue stream. So it's going to impact all 30 teams. And then obviously the coronavirus, that's going to impact things. So now, if you are a guy like Fred VanVleet or a Marc Gasol or Serge Ibaka, how many teams out there are going to have the money? There weren't a lot of teams that were going to have a lot of money this offseason anyway. Do you want to go play for those teams that aren't very good? Are you better off maybe trying to negotiate a deal that's a 1-year deal with a player option just to protect yourself against injury? Do you go for the money? Who's offering it to you? Is the money great? I think there's so many market forces in play right now that those are decisions that they're going to have to make along with their representation. But I would say this, from a Toronto perspective, why wouldn't you want those guys back? I mean, if you could work out a deal with any or all of those guys, I think it makes complete and total sense that you'd love to have those guys back. You have a really good thing going. As much as everyone's looking at a few years down the line, I was part of I've been, again, here 22 years. 7 years ago, people were saying, let's tank and get Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Thank God they didn't. Because here you are. This is the 7th year of winning. In year 6 of winning, they won an NBA title. They had to push the Rock up the mountain a few times. The Rock kept coming back down on them, but they finally figured it out. I mean, they had a team last year. I mean, how many lottery picks were on that NBA championship team a year ago, right? We talk about superstars. Well, how many superstars? Well, Kawhi Leonard became a superstar, but coming out of San Diego State, he wasn't.
Yeah,
I mean, San Diego State isn't UCLA. It's not Duke. It's not Kentucky. I mean, he had to, so my point is, I think keep your eye on the ball and right in front of you. You have something really good going on right now. And if you can keep it going and have stability another year and bridge that gap a little bit more, why wouldn't you? So I think from a Toronto perspective, Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster and company, these guys have done a sensational job. And I trust that they not only have a short-term plan in place, but more importantly, they have a long-term and an intermediate plan in place. So I bank on them, and I bank on the fact that they're going to use good judgment. And I also think if you're Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka, and Marc Gasol, you know you're in a really good situation. Why would you want to leave it?
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, perfect world, it'd be great to see all three of those guys come back, but to your point, there's a lot of variables in place, so it'll be interesting to see how everything pans out. Jack, listen, you're one of my idols. I've been watching you since a kid. You're one of the best at what you do. I do want to do a quick rapid fire with you. I want to get the personal side of you. Do you have time for a quick rapid fire?
No problem.
You ready to go? Okay, let's get right into it here. Favorite game you ever did?
Game 6, NBA Finals against the Warriors. I mean, it's a moment you dream of as a broadcaster, as a coach, as a player. That moment, and so to be part of that was clearly, the highlight of my career as a broadcaster, no question.
Favorite TV interview with a player you ever did?
Well, probably the one that was the biggest disaster, and that was when I interviewed Hedo Turkoglu in Madison Square Garden after a game, and I asked him a question, and he looked at me and he said, "Ball," and I'm like, like there's crickets in my head, and I'm going, humming. All right, what do I do? So I said to him, I said, "Well, all right, you had the ball in your hands, and and he looked at me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this was it was a train wreck. So if you haven't had an opportunity to see it, I'm sure every Raptor fan has. If you haven't, watch it. It's quite amusing. But I hung in there and I did the best job I could. The furthest thing from a sideline reporter. Usually the sideline reporters look a lot better than me. But needless to say, I did the best I could. But it was a funny moment and a moment I can look back on now and get a lot of laughs out of.
You came out tonight early, aggressive. What was different for you tonight in terms of just setting the tone with your game in this game?
Ball.
The ball in your hands, and you did a lot with it.
I got nothing else to say.
You had the ball in your hands and you made plays.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Hedo Turkoglu.
Yeah, I actually remember that. That was a classic moment. Who wins in a game of 21? You or Matt Devlin?
Who wins at a game of 21? Wow. I don't play much basketball anymore. I don't play much at all. I play tennis now to kind of get the same kind of workout because I don't need anyone elbowing me and all that. But if I give myself a few months to train and get ready, I'm beating them.
Who wins in a game of golf? You or Leo?
I've golfed with Leo. Leo hits the ball a country mile. He's not sure where it's going. I think that'd be an actually really good match. But I tell you what, I'm winning on the 19th hole. That's for sure.
I love that. I love the competitiveness. If you ever got back into coaching, Jack, which NBA team would you love to coach aside from the Raptors?
Wow. Obviously, my hometown in New York. Probably, my borough that I grew up in Brooklyn, or in New York in Madison Square Garden. I've actually coached in Madison Square Garden many times as an assistant at Fordham. And then when I was the head coach at Niagara, actually I had the biggest win of my career as the head coach at Niagara when we beat St. John's. They had 4 NBA players on their team. I think you might have remembered Ron Artest and Felipe Lopez, Zendit Hamilton, who played a little bit with the Raptors, and LeVar Postel. But they had 4 NBA guys, and clearly we didn't. And we beat them by 23 in Madison Square Garden. So that was a big moment in my career. So, it's the Mecca. So obviously, probably Brooklyn or New York, definitely.
Next one here. If any actor could play you in a movie, who would it be? You might have to think about this one.
Oh, it's interesting. I'm getting a lot of people reaching out to me recently, and they say you and Dr. Tony Fauci sound alike.
Yeah, you actually do.
We're both from Brooklyn, so he's older than me. I don't know if I would have Dr. Fauci play me, but we sound like each other a little bit. Wow, who would I want to have play me? Well, you know what? I'm going to give the same answer Dr. Fauci gave. Probably a guy like Brad Pitt. Everyone loves him, and I don't know if we look alike, but the guy I get compared to, people say I look like a little bit. The late Robin Williams, Liam Neeson. Those are a few guys that people say I look like. So maybe Liam Neeson. Maybe he plays me.
And last one here, Jack. Probably the toughest of them all. Who's the greatest Raptor of all time, in your opinion, of covering this team for so many years?
Oh, that's not hard at all. That's Kyle Lowry. I think he'll be the first guy to have his number retired, deservedly so. He's the Wendell Clark of the Toronto Raptors. He's the blood and guts, the hero, the hard-nosed guy. He's had his share of failure, but we all love a comeback story, and we love a guy that's grinded his way to the top. Is he the most talented Raptor to play? No, he isn't. The best one season, definitely Kawhi Leonard. The most talented guy in the history of the Raptors, Vince Carter. I mean, we're talking about Hall of Famers here. I mean, Kawhi Leonard will go in the Hall of Fame. Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady's already in. And I feel bad Chris Bosh was on that trajectory. I still think Chris Bosh will end up in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I do too.
It's unfortunate that, health reasons he had to finish his career. And a guy that is not being talked about enough that is a great Raptor that will have his number retired as well. And that's DeMar DeRozan, who was a great, great Raptor and a wonderful person and a high character guy. And, but if I had to pick the one guy, the guy that has to have the number retired first, it would definitely be Kyle Lowry, Luca.
And that will conclude our rapid fire. Jack, thank you so much for spending the last half hour with me. I truly appreciate this. Like I said, I've been watching you since a kid. I absolutely love your commentary, and you are one of the greatest basketball minds that I have ever watched or listened to. So, Jack, thank you so much. Please stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll get back to normality sooner rather than later, and we can once again hear you do some great commentary for the Raptors and give some great analysis. Thanks so much, Jack.
Luca, my pleasure. Thanks for the kind words. The check's in the mail, my man. So, no, I really appreciate it, and I hope everybody out there is safe, and hope to get a chance to meet you someday, and hope that we get back to Raptor basketball and NBA basketball soon. But thanks for having me, Luca. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, and thank you guys for watching this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all again in the next video. Have a great weekend.